Okay, welcome to part two of the endocrine emergencies lecture. We're going to get into symptomatic hyperglycemic. Hyperglycemia means that there's a high blood sugar in the body, and symptomatic means that we are starting to see symptoms of this high blood sugar. Okay, so patients in the state of usually in like some kind of state of altered mental status, and unfortunately, it is a result of several different combined problems. Usually in the type 1 diabetics, this leads to a ketoacidosis with dehydration from excessive urine. Their sugars are so high, their kidneys are really trying to function out all the acids from the body that the actual not of the non-production of sugar from our cells, and we start peeing this out. We keep peeing and peeing and peeing, and this is the body's way of trying to regulate our sugars that we actually start dehydrating our body. In type 2 diabetes, this leads to something called the non-ketotic hyperosmolar state of dehydration. Okay? So it's a non-ketonic hyperosmolar coma, or the hyperosmolar non-ketotic coma, HHNC. Okay? And this is where in the type 2 diabetic, their sugars are so high that it's pretty much the exact same as the diabetic ketoacidosis or the DKA for the type 1s, but it's a little bit of a different feature because they are able to produce the insulin. It's just the fact that their diets suck and that they're not able to get all the sugar that they are consuming into their cells, which actually overrides the kidneys themselves. So type 1 diabetics suffer from DKA, diabetic ketoacidosis. Type 2 diabetics suffer from the hyperosmolar non-ketotic coma, which is another state of dehydration. The patient that chronically has high blood sugar in their body, the problem is that once we get diabetes, our normal range is anywhere between 60 to 120, right? Milligrams per deciliter of actually sugar in our body. When we start going higher than that, and some of the diabetics that you guys are going to meet, like, live in the 300s, okay? Some of the diabetics that you're going to meet could possibly live in the 500s, all right? The highest sugar I have ever seen in my life was a transport from one of the rural communities to one of our local hospitals, and the BGL was 1,500 by the time we got to the hospital. Our monitors don't read that high, guys. When you guys take a blood sugar and it's higher than 600, usually right around 500 or 600, all it's going to tell you is high. It's going to say high on the actual machine. So we kept getting readings of high and high and high. This guy had urinated quite a bit, and we were pumping fluids in this guy quite a bit. And we got to the hospital, and he was at 1,500 for his BGL. Guys, that is maple syrup for blood. Okay? The workload on the heart of that gentleman that we transported had to have been unreal. Now, there wasn't anything wrong with his heart while we were transporting him. His blood pressure kind of sucked, but that is maple syrup, guys. And I have a couple more stories about diabetics for you throughout this lecture. But the problem is that when we actually have hyperglycemia and we live in a constant state of hyperglycemia, it takes wounds longer to heal, okay? Or wounds might not heal at all, okay? I don't know if you guys have ever noticed this, but when you guys go to your primary care physicians, take a look at the walls and look for the sign that says, if you're diabetic, please take off your shoes, because the doctor wants to see your feet. And they really look for wounds on the feet to make sure that if there are any wounds, they are healing. And they really want to look all over the body for wounds to see if they're actually healing, because if we get open wounds on a diabetic, they could become severely infected, and then we got a whole other problem as well with our diabetics. So again, just a nasty, nasty disease process, man. They could be suffering from normal for them, numbness and tingling in their hands and feet. They can go blind, right? They can definitely go into renal failure, and then they're developing some kind of gastric motility problems, which usually leads to like constipation or possibly even chronic diarrhea, depending on the patient. When the actual blood glucose levels are not controlled in our diabetes type 2 patients, that hyperosmolar, hyperketonic, or non-ketonic coma, or the HHNS. Guys, you're going to see this as HHNS, HHNK, HHNC. It's all the same thing that they're talking about, okay? But obviously, this is going to be because of high glucose levels or the hyperglycemia. They can have an altermentation. They can appear drowsy. They can appear to be very lethargic, right? Very slow in answering your questions. And they kind of talk like this while they're answering your questions. And then all of a sudden they start talking about something else like, man, that's a pretty fly swatter you have on your wall. And they might not necessarily be hallucinating. There could very well be a fly swatter hanging from the wall, but they have this kind of loose cognition. I don't want to say that it's so loose that they're jumping from one thought to the next and back, but it's just they're not really responsive enough. They might be answering your questions, but something just seems off about them. Okay, they will be severely dehydrated. They'll have this really nasty, dry, flaky skin. Let me tell you something, okay? Nothing's more disgusting than getting a whole bunch of dead, flaky skin from somebody else all over your uniform, all right? But it happens, okay? And it usually happens with our symptomatic hyperglycemics, okay? They could have visual deficits. We already talked about that. They can have sensory deficits, right? They might not feel you touching their hand, okay? Or both hands, right? They might not be able to feel their lips when they're talking, okay? Which kind of makes them sound like a little, it almost makes them sound like they're intoxicated, okay? Like they're drunk, basically, right? They could have paralysis, right? Partial paralysis, but it's not like a stroke paralysis where the whole side of the body is paralyzed. Like they're going to say like, man, I really can't feel my right leg and my left arm. Well, that makes no sense. That's definitely, I'll tell you right now, that's definitely not a stroke, right? We already talked about stroke-like symptoms. Usually the stroke is all on one side of the body, right? But that can happen. They could say, well, on my left hand, these 3 fingers are numb, but these 2 aren't, right? It's just some crazy stuff. And then, unfortunately, if these go untreated and they are asymptomatic hyperglycemic and even a chronic hyperglycemic, they can actually suffer from seizures as well. So, whenever we have higher glucose levels in our blood, this causes the actual excretion of the glucose through our urine, or we are putting our kidneys on overdrive. And technically, you guys can have something, it's still being kind of researched, but you guys can have an acute hyperglycemic episode. And I'm going to pick on all you guys that drink these energy drinks. The Jolts, or the Rock Stars, or Monster energy drinks, or the whatever the hell else is out there, right? Guys, those are terrible for you. Terrible for you. Next time you guys decide to go and buy one, I want you guys to look at the nutritional label on those things and see how much sugar is actually in those things. Okay? You guys can technically start peeing out sugar, causing damage to your liver. Causing damage to your kidneys by drinking too many of those throughout the day. And I'm telling you right now, you guys want to become symptomatic hyperglycemics and possibly diabetics real quick, keep drinking those energy drinks, guys. They are crap. Okay? Now, there are energy drinks out there that they're pretty healthy for you. Okay? They can be, or at least more healthy than the Rock Stars and Monsters and whatever the hell else other names are out there. You know what I mean? But guys, those are extremely terrible for you. They're raising your sugar up so much. They are keeping you guys dehydrated. All right. Just please. I'm not telling you guys to quit. I'm not your dad, right? To be honest with you, I really don't care. Okay, because if you guys stop drinking them, I don't get a paycheck, right? So carry on. But for your own sake, really think about stopping that shit. Okay, it's not good for you guys, right? Um, when the when the kidneys actually start excreting glucose in the urine, the patient gets this sense of severe thirst, and they can't quench their thirst no matter how much water they're actually drinking. And unfortunately, with most of our diabetics, when they're symptomatic hyperglycemics, they're not drinking water. They're trying to quench their thirst with Coca-Cola or Dr. Pepper or, oh, well, I'll just drink a Sprite because it's healthy because it has no caffeine in it, right? Well, again, right, we're adding gasoline onto a fire. These people need to be drinking water. And unfortunately, most of them are not doing that, okay? And then if it gets really bad and they keep peeing and peeing and peeing and they're not drinking water and water and water, but instead of drinking Dr. Pepper, Dr. Pepper, Dr. Pepper, right, they can go unconscious. They can go into seizure-like activity, and this is due to severe dehydration. Man, guys, I would know this slide for this test. Talk about some key words to help you guys remember the hyperglycemia signs and symptoms for both my test and for National Registry. Okay? Extreme thirst, polyuria, polydipsia, polyphagia. Okay? Frequent urination, very dry skin, constant hunger, blurred vision, drowsiness, and possibly even some nausea. Okay, let's switch it up now. Let's get into symptomatic hypoglycemia. Okay? This is a true emergency, guys. Okay? In my opinion, this is more emergency than hyperglycemic. Okay? The hyperglycemic, you can live quite a bit, to be honest with you, with your sugars being really high. However, you're not going to live you're not going to live long at all if your sugar's too low. Okay, the brain is starting to get pissed, right? And when the brain starts to get pissed, remember I told this in another lecture. I want you guys to think of a brain. I know this is very rudimentary. Okay. Probably very unprofessional, but I'm going to throw it out there anyways to you guys. I want you guys to think of the brain as a pimp. Okay? He wants his money. He wants his drink. He wants his sugar. Okay? And when the pimp gets upset, he starts smacking all those other organs around to make sure he's getting what he's getting. Okay? So, hypoglycemia. This is an acute emergency, guys. This is an acute emergency in which the patient's blood sugar levels drop and must be corrected swiftly. Okay? These are the people that you guys are actually going to be giving sugar to, all right, in order to try to save their lives. Okay? Numerous ways this can happen. Some of the more common ones. This can be from patients who actually inject or maybe accidentally double up oral medications that produce a little too much insulin. Maybe that type 1 diabetic, through routine throughout their days because they've been living with this throughout their whole lives. They injected some insulin and oops, they forgot to eat. It happens, okay? They're only humans, all right? That can seriously crash your sugar levels, okay? You might have that diabetic that accidentally doubled up on their actual units of insulin that they took, okay? So they didn't eat enough, right? The body processed all that food that they ate, but they doubled up on their insulin, and this insulin's floating around their body, and it's opening up the cells, and it's like, okay, come on, glucose, where the hell are you? And glucose ain't showing up. All right. This can also, when that insulin level remains high, glucose is rapidly taking out of the blood. And yes, the patient can deplete all of their glucose from their blood by accidentally doubling up on their insulin, and it can kill them, guys. It can kill them real quick. Okay. If the glucose levels falls, there may be an insufficient amount to supply their brain, aka the pimp. So the brain's going to start shutting stuff down, right? You're not paying me, you're not working, okay? Because the brain wants to survive. When we're dealing with the symptomatic hypoglycemic, their mental status declines very quick. And really, when you guys see this patient, they may appear intoxicated, right? They may be extremely combative for no reason whatsoever. But guys, when their sugars are low, I want you thinking you are watching these people actively die. Okay? We have somebody with some altermentation, some kind of unusual behavior, could go straight into unconsciousness, can cause a permanent brain damage. Okay? It's not these people's fault. Maybe they messed up. Okay? Maybe they just took too much insulin. Maybe they took their insulin and forgot to eat. Right? Maybe they took their insulin, they didn't eat enough. Right? It's not their fault. Okay? But these people are going to be acting very, very unusual. And if we don't get sugar in them real quick, they're going to die. Common reasons for why blood glucose levels will drop in the first place. Could be these people have just gone to see their endocrinologist, and the endocrinologist decided to change the level of glucose that the patient was normally taking. It can be because the patient, for whatever reason, decided they felt that they needed more insulin than necessary. The correct dose of insulin without the patient eating, I think that's the most popular one, right? People just get in a hurry, right? We're Americans. We live fast. We live hard. We don't have time to sit down and eat, right? Well, unfortunately, sometimes these people will take their insulin and then they forget to eat. It happens, okay? Or, here's the other one. There's actually the correct dose of illness, and the patient then starts to develop some kind of an acute illness. So specifically, the famous illness that really gets to our diabetics is just the average everyday common flu, all right? Where they might have felt good in the morning, so they took their normal dose of insulin, and by the afternoon they feel like shit. They feel the need that they need to eat, so they give more insulin, and next thing you know, they're running a fever, and it just completely wipes out their glucose storage. Those are some of the more common reasons why diabetics do have hypoglycemic episodes. Please remember that hypoglycemia develops much more quickly than hyperglycemia. Okay? You guys technically have experienced hypoglycemia before in your life, or at least a mild form of it. Does anybody get hangry? Do you guys get angry before you guys eat? Right? Or if you guys haven't eaten in a while, do you guys start becoming irritable? Right? That's the pimp getting pissed off. That's your head saying, hey, what the hell is going on and why are we not eating right now? Okay? I'm running a little low on fuel. I want my sugar. Where the hell is it? Right? That's what your brain's saying. That's why you guys get angry. Okay? Make sure that you guys are feeding your brain when it wants something. Okay? But guys, this can occur extremely quick in people. Matter of minutes, specifically in our diabetic population. Okay, some signs and symptoms of actually symptomatic hypoglycemia is they can have anywhere from normal to shallow to rapid respirations. Okay, well, scratch that one because it could be anything, right? They can have pale, moist skin. Well, let's scratch that one because that's a lot of other different disease processes out there, right? They could be extremely diaphoretic. Well, let's scratch that one because there's a lot of things that can make us diaphoretic as well. They can have dizziness and headaches. Okay, maybe a little something. Now we're kind of pinpointed to only certain kind of disease processes a little bit. They can have a rapid pulse. Well, I can get a rapid pulse from just hearing my alarm go off in the morning, right? And then they can have a normal to low blood pressure. How do you guys feel about those symptoms? A very broad generalized set of symptoms for a hypoglycemic. Okay, however, there are some that we can kind of pretty much pinpoint that this is dealing with a hypoglycemic. The big one that really kind of distinguishes possible hypoglycemia is the altered mental status. Okay, most of these times it's going to be some kind of unusual anxiolytic or possibly some kind of combative behavior. Okay, and then quickly, they will go into possibly a seizure, into possible fainting, and all of a sudden they go straight into a coma. Okay, the brain has had enough. The pimp says, "You guys don't want to work. I'm shutting down." Okay. Weakness on one side of the body. Well, man, that kind of sounds like a stroke to me, right? But really, it all comes down to a very rapid change in mental status. This is why I'm really, really trying to get you guys to understand that if you guys have somebody with altered mentation, we have got to check a sugar on these patients much earlier than we would regularly do on somebody that might not be altered at all. Okay? When we're dealing with this, these people are dying in front of you. And if you wait too long, they're going to do just that. All right? Anytime you guys are dealing with the AEIOU TIPS mnemonic, anytime you guys are dealing with anybody that has any kind of altered mentation, we need to check a sugar quickly. Okay, guys, I skipped over a couple of different slides. Slides kind of showing you the quote-unquote blood glucose levels and what is normal, and kind of put a picture on what is not and what is too high, what is too low, what is too high. And then the next one is for the actual hypoglycemic crisis. It kind of shows you, compared to the hyperglycemic crisis, what we're looking at as far as sugars. Check those out. Again, just something for you guys to visualize exactly what I'm talking about. So here are the hypoglycemic signs and symptoms. Again, this is a great slide to help you guys focus your studies, specifically for my test in class and for the National Registry. So you guys can look over that. I'm not going to weed through this for you guys. You guys are all capable of reading that. This is where we're going to stop part 2, and I'm going to go into part 3 next. Thanks, guys.